Now we move on to also an issue that honestly is kind of a base issue for so many of the issues that we're talking about today. Without our own planet, we wouldn't be able to have these conversations or even talking about how we can even move forward on this. And so I'd like to introduce Sharon Delgado, the convener of the Cal-Pac Conference of Fossil-Free UMC, and Nancy Glade, a leader for the Eco Sustainability Task Force in the Northern Illinois Conference.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having Sharon and I on today. I'd like to start with just a quick prayer, if I might. It was a lot to take in at the last presentation, so I thought maybe I just use these words from the Lutheran World Federation. Christ, our wounded healer, suffering the pains of creation, lead us back to the tree of life, to the source of healing for the earth. Amen.
Amen.
Now I'm going to share my screen so that we could see the legislation. I'm going to start out with the social principles. Actually, we agree that from creation justice, did I do the right one? No, I did not. From creation justice group movement that we should continue to uplift it as a whole. But if we are, okay, so you guys can see this one, right? So if we lift up it all, paragraph 160 is the part that talks about creation, community of all creation. There is one part in there, dependence on fossil fuels, which has an awkward clause that maybe not this year, but maybe the next time we can address it and do an edit. It says the burning of fossil fuels, including oil, coal, oil, and to a lesser extent, natural gas. That to a lesser extent is not what we really want in there, because we don't want to give anyone the idea that fracking natural gas out of the earth is a productive way to spend our money. I know we're going to have to do a lot of changes to take gas out of our homes because we all like our gas stoves and our gas heat, but I think that is the direction we hope to go to. So that's one of the harder things that we'd like to address if we get a chance to, but certainly we won't pick apart the document. There are a set of documents in the Book of Resolution, and you probably remember that the Book of Resolutions is the companion to the Book of Discipline, and they all sunsetted because they were due in 2020 to be renewed, and we didn't have general conference, so we couldn't renew them. So they're up to be retained or readopted, and they're from 1025 through 1035. And they have to do with environmental racism, environmental health, stewardship and justice for the land, and the climate change and the church response. They are very important to keep in our Book of Resolutions as they go deeper into the subject matter that the theology of the social principles has laid out for us. So we're going to keep those. And this next group is also under Church and Society, the first legislative group that deals with church and society. So one is on land use, and this one comes back. I'll refer to this again later on, but includes to converting to alternate energy resources. And so it's got some theology. This is again in the Book of Resolutions. The next one is to establish a conference care coordinator. And this would be in the Book of Discipline. So you can see paragraph 629. And I know that many annual conferences are having a hard time adding staff to the conference level. So we're hoping that they see this as maybe adding to the profile of somebody who's already on conference staff, or adding a position in the annual conference for a focus person just for creation care, and putting them at the table for the conference ministry, program ministries conversations. The next two are both important, but they're also in the book of resolutions: green team formation and commitment to net zero gas emissions. And those are going to be talked about in general in other ways. So what our general conference committee working on creation justice wants to do is to put some action into this. The book of resolution tends to be just something that is theological and suggestions. But when we have it in the book of discipline, things change. So here's 3 petitions that will come in front of the local church legislative committee. The first 2 are in the trustee category, in the 2533 and 2550, asking the local church trustees to conduct evaluations of their annual carbon footprint or greenhouse gas emissions, and to do an audit in that way so that they come up with a figure, and then to report that every year at charge conference, and to see how their equation changes over the years. Now, there is really only one universal standard for doing an audit for carbon emissions, and that's the same one that audited, that evaluated all your appliances in your home. And and so we, oh gosh, as we use that standard, and I didn't even write it down, so my head's going crazy. It's hard to present and remember all these little details. But when I remember it, I'll get back to it. So we're going to do audits and asking the local church to do that. And then we found this one in here. I'm going to highlight it here. This one's in paragraph 2554, which talks to churches about how they organize. So we're asking them to change one little piece in there, because we found that local churches point to this earth advocacy and say, oh, we're all earth advocates and that we don't have to have a green team. So if we put it in the book of discipline that they need to have a green team, adding just green team after that, we hope it'll give it a little more push to have a green team. Now we're going to talk green team, green team, green team at every level of the annual conference and in the district and local church. But we just need to get it in there in the discipline so that we start things going right. This next petition, 603.4, is one that I created because of found that in my conference, although we're real earth crazy, where we met for annual conference session wasn't always sustainable. And so following the principles that the United Women in Faith laid out, the 13 principles, we hope that every annual conference will look at their location and review them not only with disability standards, ADA standards, and race standards, but also energy, waste, and consumption. So that is another one that's really going to help change our focus. And then the last 3 that I have, this is all about land use. And when Kim Richmond wrote these, she was using one of our model resolutions on land use. And you can go back to our umcreationjustice.org site and get kind of a broader view of what the land use petitions are all about. These 3 petitions ask for general conference land use, district land use, and conference-owned land use to evaluate the properties to bring it back in harmony with God's creation. Specifically, looking at native plants, removing invasive species, stopping use of synthetics, and things like that. Now, I know that the 2500s in the trustee category ask the trustees to evaluate the properties every year. I am the Northern Illinois Conference trustee chair, and so I know that all the properties that we have in the conference get evaluated. But a specific focus on finding harmony with God's creation is going to help us evaluate exactly what we're doing that's harmful to the land. And that's the last thing we want to do. We want to be able to preserve the land we have and not just go from property to property. There are other petitions or legislations in the on the docket. Some have to do with plastics, one has to do with construction, but I'm not going to address them specifically. I think you will understand when you look through the ADA or hear about the legislation that's new. You will find out how you will know how to vote and how to think about these. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's not everything. What I'd like to do is turn this over to my colleague Sharon Delgado so that she can explain the legislation on fossil fuels.
Thank you, Nancy. Great. Yeah, I'm here to speak on from fossil-free UMC's perspective, and I don't have slides, but fossil-free UMC did grow out of the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement. It used to be a task force. And then when maybe 6 months ago, we revived fossil-free UMC, which was active in 2016 and before 2016 and was present at the 2016 General Conference with a petition very much like the one we have today. So I want to start with a reading from Mark 6:11. Jesus said, "If any place will not welcome you and refuse to hear you, as you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them." And fossil-free UMC we're focused on shaking the dust off our United Methodist feet and converting fossil fuel investments at all levels of the church to investments in goods and services that will support a just transition to a clean energy future. And the first step is to pass the General Conference resolution that I really don't need to show you, because it's just a petition to add fossil fuels, just 2 words, to our list of ethical investment screens on page 717 of the Book of Discipline. It was in the General Conference of 1980 when the United Methodist Church became the first denomination to create a resolution that is still in effect today. It keeps being renewed and upped as far as climate justice issues go, but it was about transitioning from fossil fuels to clean energy, renewables, and conservation. And we were the first denomination to do that. But our denomination, unlike many others, we're still investing in fossil fuels. And it's not just Westpath. Westpath does prefer engagement, corporate engagement, to investments, but I've been involved in different aspects of corporate engagement with fossil fuels. I was part of a United Women in Faith event several years ago, at least 5 years ago, when we went to Chevron headquarters in San Ramon and sat around a big table with executives and got pictures taken and talked with them and engaged with them. But we are past that point. We have done what we can to invest in fossil fuel companies and engage with them. Corporate engagement works with some companies. It works in a lot of good ways, but not with fossil fuel companies that are doubling down on fossil fuels. And the fossil fuel corporations, Big Oil, ExxonMobil, Occidental Petroleum, Chevron, many others that we are actually investing our United Methodist funds in, they have known since well before 1980 about what their products will do and the harm that they'll cause. And yet they've been fostering, creating a big network to foster doubt about the reality of climate change. They are still greenwashing. They are still lobbying against strong climate legislation, not just here, but in governments around the world, even climate conference suggestions. They weaken what they can of strong climate action. And they're doubling down on coal, oil, and gas. In fact, Chevron recently boasted that 2023 was their best year ever for selling fossil fuels. And I engaged with them, and they're still being engaged by our WestPath, the ones who are holding our pensions. And I'm glad they are, and they do a lot of good work with corporate engagement, but this is not one. I want to talk just about a couple of reasons why we should divest, and just that I think it's possible that it's going to pass. It'll be amazing if it does to me, because we kind of got a late start. But there are a lot of reasons on our website, fossilfreeumc.net, moral reasons, spiritual reasons, practical reasons, and even financial reasons. And so you can go to fossilfreeumc.net to find out more. But there is a good Wesleyan reason, moral reason to divest from fossil fuels. Very simple. It is first, do no harm. And fossil fuels, because they are the primary driver of climate change, cause immense harm, immeasurable harm to creation and to our human family, and will into the future. And the people who are most impacted live in poor countries or communities or neighborhoods, often Black and brown people, and are the ones who suffer first and worst from both fossil fuel pollution, which is part of climate justice, working against that, and climate change. That's what we're dealing with when we talk about climate justice, is the inequities. And these are mostly people who have contributed very little, if at all, to fossil fuel pollution that causes climate change. And children are disproportionately harmed. The global divestment movement puts this moral argument in secular terms. It's wrong to profit from wrecking the planet. And so that's a good reminder of what's at stake here. And there are also financial reasons to divest. So let's look at it just from a selfish point of view. I'm a pensioner. I get my notifications and my money from WestPath, and I would like to have a stable pension. And I'd also like to have a stable climate, and for my children and grandchildren to have a stable climate. But fossil fuels aren't that good an investment, as it turns out. And in the past 10 years, fossil fuels have performed worse than the overall stock market. I should have a slide that I can show you to show you how that measures out. They're in our website, and especially on the talking point on reasons why WestPath should support divestment. We have also reasons why central conferences should support divestment, and just reasons to support divestment, and what's at stake with climate change, with a lot of amazing Paul Jeffrey photographs. But climate, not only are they not performing well, we get some high points like recently, like last year, 2023, but when they go up sharply, the profits, but they're usually from shocks to the system, such as the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Is that really what we want? It's risky. It's risky. And they'll become riskier, fossil fuels, as an investment as climate change progresses. The value of fossil fuel companies is in their reserves. And because there are going to be, as climate change progresses, more lawsuits because of damage due to extreme weather furthered by climate change, because there are going to be inevitably more regulations on fossil fuels, and because of just the transition to renewables that's already underway, that means that these stocks are going to lose value. Their reserves are going to not have the value that they've had before. And so what that means is many of them will become what they call stranded assets. Stranded assets. And really, they sure really need to have stranded assets, because if all those reserves are burned, our planet will be uninhabitable, at least in some places, and maybe who knows how bad that could get, because their reserves are far beyond what our so-called carbon budget is to even stay at all safe as far as climate goes. And we're in fact beyond that. The International Energy Agency says we can burn no more fossil fuels. Oh, no, that we can start no new fossil fuel projects. I'm sorry, that we really need to stop exploiting, extracting, transporting, building refineries and all of that. We need to stop. We need to start now really taking seriously the phase out of fossil fuels. So this petition could pass. I do think so. A similar one was defeated in 2016 by a 2/3 vote. And that means that a third of the delegates voted in favor of it. But since that time, climate change has gotten so much worse, and so many more people are concerned about climate change, and including in our churches. And also many of the disaffiliating churches were never, many of them were opposed to strong climate action. So it really could pass. And when you look at the global divestment movement, it's really progressing quickly as far as institutional divestment goes. Over 1,600 institutions have now divested, institutions responsible for over $40 trillion in assets. And 35% of those, I was surprised to find this out, 35% are churches and other faith communities. Last year, the Methodist Church of Britain divested, and so did the Church of England. And we've got our Presbyterian brothers and sisters. We've got many Episcopalians, or the Episcopalian Church. UCC was the first to divest, Unitarian Universalist, and so many others. And I find it ironic, really. I find it ironic that we were the first denomination to call for a transition away from fossil fuels. Will we be the last to divest? Will the first be last in this situation? I really pray to God not. And I hope not. I hope it passes this time. If not, we're not going away. And even if it passes, fossil-free UMC is not going away. We're going to work to make this transition through, as I said, every level of the life of the church. It's past time for us to shake off the coal dust from our feet, to wipe the crude oil and liquefied natural gas on our feet. I thought of that this morning. It's so true. As a testimony against these fossil fuel corporations, they are bad actors at this point. And to walk in solidarity with others towards climate justice and toward a justly sourced clean energy future, we can stop being responsible for funding the damage that's being done. And I think we might have time for Q&A. That's what Nancy and I planned.
Well, I think we only have a minute left, but I do want to say.
Okay. Oh, that's good. Okay.
I do want to say that we are going to be very active at General Conference, and that on Earth Day, April 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern time, so I guess that would be 4 p.m. Pacific time. We will be live streaming our worship service from First United Methodist Church in Charlotte. So come to our umcreationjustice.org website to find that. But if you do go to General Conference, please come find us. We're going to be standing outside a bank in Charlotte protesting on the 23rd for fossil-free UMC, and there'll be Green Faith and a lot of other people will be with us. So we're part of the Link Coalition, which many of you are, and we're just so glad that you have given us this opportunity to be with you today. Enjoy the rest of your evening.